So you've seen a little bit of urban. Now I'm going to talk of what's coming. So I'm assuming that all of you have touched urban at this point, right? And want to know what we're working on. So just to go back a little bit, urban is a collaborative, data-driven. It's collaborative urban, data-driven urban planning. So we focus on a few workflows. We've been putting a lot of effort in the last years in comprehensive planning and in specific planning. So all of the work that we've done for zoning, for land use, having the regulation, applying buildings, and then starting to build out your development and your scenarios, right? We've also touched a little bit on current planning, which is the projects. And Brooks mentioned a little bit of this in the Nottingham example. We're putting more effort into that area in the future. So to kind of recap what the big things that have happened in 2023, we have put a lot of effort on using web scenes as the outreach mechanism in urban. So you do your work, your planning work in urban, you create your plans, your scenarios, and then you can export them out to the web scene so they're consumable in other applications in the Esri family. So you can send them to an experience builder, an instant app, story map, or even a 360 VR experience. So that we're using the web scene for that, sending it out. They're also being used for presentations when you want to manipulate a little bit more the outputs of urban and actually show them to people with more digestible pop-ups, or like look at the information a little bit more in a logical way for the regular user, not the actual planner or like a citizen or a decision maker. So we have made very clear how to consume that data in the web scene and look at very detailed and structured pop-ups. We've not only done this for the plan, we started, actually last year we started with the export to web scene at the city level, so you could export the plans and the projects that you had into a web scene and then consume that in other apps, as I said. Then we continue with the plan scenario earlier this year in February, and we finished the story of web scenes with projects this June. So the same functionality that we have provided for plans, we provided that for projects, so you can also export whatever 3D model that you brought into your project with the description and the information that you've given to it and send it to the web scene. So again, we are trying to leverage the ArcGIS like functionalities and all of the things that we have in our platform in urban, so we can continue providing this to more users. So now talking about what's coming. And this is for mostly for our distributors here or international users. We've been asked for years, probably since we released urban initially in 2019, because we released only on ArcGIS Online. When will we have it for available for enterprise? And we actually have good news. We actually have a plan, and urban on enterprise will be released next year with enterprise 11.3. So we have actually started an early adopter program, a private one. It's in progress right now, and the plan is to release with 11.3 in May next year. So we're depending on their dates, but that's kind of the time frame where we're thinking that enterprise will be available. So this is mostly for those users that need to have deployments on premises or private clouds, and they want to control a little bit more how they do things, how they deploy, and how they provide or distribute their data to their users. So another feature that it is related to international users or people that not necessarily work in Web Mercator is local coordinates. So we decided that it was a good feature in urban to release with enterprise, or give the ability to those users testing it right now to also test local coordinates. So from the October release on, which it's just a few weeks away, we will be able to support other coordinate systems than Web Mercator. We've done several improvements. You can create a model in a different coordinate system than web Mercator now, and then it'll automatically either reproject some of the data sets that you're using. You're going to have to be just in one coordinate system, of course, but it'll be a different experience as you're creating your new models. You are going to be working on these local models now, so like everything that you're doing, your editing will be at that projection level. And then we've also created tools to migrate existing plans or that have been created in web Mercator into your new local coordinate, or the one that you've been wanting to use for a while. Now will be available in Urban. So again, this is coming with the October release, so just a few weeks away. Now, talking a little bit more about the future, and like keeping this a little bit high level, but you saw it a little bit with the example of Nottingham, and some of the tools that have been released this year with the 3D object feature layers being available now on ArcGIS Online. That means that Urban can do some of these things now as well. So as I mentioned, projects has been an area that we haven't fully exploited, and now we're going for it. So we will be able to upload 3D models and also media layers or 2D images or files and drape them or georeference them in Urban. We will be able to do certain checks against the regulation. And we will also continue taking advantage of a functionality that I don't know if you're using much right now, but actually users that are not licensed with Urban can actually create projects as we speak right now with the current Urban release, actually from a couple of years ago. This been available. So we're utilizing Hub, which is another product in the ArcGIS family, focused for community engagement, to actually create community identities for those users that are not Urban licensed users. So that means that a developer or an architect or anybody that wants to submit a project into the city could actually create one of these identities and upload the model and go through the checks that are going to be available. So this is like just part of our stories to integrating with other products. As you've seen, we integrate with CityEngine. Hub is another one of the products that we tightly integrate with as well. Another area that we are doing a lot of investigation right now is the inclusion of streets and the planning of the open spaces and these streets inside of our plans. So we understand that there's a clear relationship between what we're trying to develop and what happens in between those developments. So the first thing that we're introducing probably next year is streets into the urban schema. Once we have those streets there, we will be able to create something very similar to what we have on our buildings right now, which are space uses. So we are trying to create street related space uses as well, and start to plan how those things could go into those spaces in between the developments. These spaces will also contain metrics, so you'll be able to utilize them as you're trying to create your KPIs or your dashboards. And farther ahead in time, we will also do analysis on this data. So there are quite a bit of plans around streets, but I think the first introduction to it might be next year with introducing them to the schema of Urban. And Brooks already showed a really cool video of XR. So now a little bit more about what we're planning to do. XR has been an R&D project for a while. We're actually engaging a few customers as an early adopter private program where we're starting to test things internally, like what's the level of effort of creating this game, like moving the urban models or the plans into the game engine and all that. The plan is to open this up for the public next year. So you'll be able to do your plans in Urban, generate all those proposals, and those services that are being generated by Urban will be consumed directly by the game engine, and you will have this immersive experience in XR. So keep an eye on this. This is something like everybody gets excited when they see it. So like if you are interested in, just let us know, because like we can add you to the list of people that are interested in XR. Then a couple other things that I just want to mention, but like these are just conversations that we are starting. We are planning to continue work on the Urban API. We do it internally to continue providing everything for CityEngine, for the integration that they're building. We provide it for the XR team too. So the Urban API is actually foundational for us internally, as well as to continue creating integrations with other systems, right? So with the work that we're doing on projects, and we've already seen it, the API has been very useful for permitting system, connecting what we've done with Urban, or maybe something that gets created in the permitting system and bring it into Urban because they want to visualize it in the 3D context of the city. Again, the API will continue to evolve. We see it as a connector. We see it also as a system of record because you can actually see the entire schema of Urban, ask queries or ask questions or query it, and also write to it. You can do mutations with the API. So there's more than we want to see around that. And then analysis is something that we're expanding. We do have a few interactive analysis tools right now in the product, but we want to be a little bit more purposeful on how we perform analysis in Urban. And in fact, this week, Brooks and I were here the entire week, and there was one day just dedicated to the type of analysis that we want to do in Urban in the future. So just keep your eyes and ears open, because like there will be more coming in the next few years in the area of analysis for Urban. So that's it. That's a quick overview of our roadmap and what's coming. I hope that this makes you excited and you continue to use the product and look forward for these things to come out. So thank you. Yeah, it's on.
I just want to say congratulations. The streets are so cool.
Thank you. Like congratulate the people like in the back of the room. They are doing the hard work.
Yeah.
I'm just showing it.
Yeah, so that's all I had to say. Awesome work.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Yeah, really nice work. Very, very, very impressive stuff. So thank you for all the hard work, everyone. Just a quick question for the API. How is the streaming of information coming back and forth? Is it through JSON text, and can I get, let's say, the shadow analysis? Can I? What kind of, how does it work?
Well, I do have the developers in the back of the room to answer this.
Sorry,
but they're turning completely bad.
Yeah.
So, like, do I try to answer as best as I can, and then okay. So right now we have services like behind the Urban model, right? And what we're doing is querying those services that are basically your databases, right, in ArcGIS Online. We can query them, and for certain things about Urban, mostly the schema, and then we can also get information and write information to it, right? So if you were talking about permitting this morning, right? I could bring in the permitting system data into the system and write it into Urban. Specifically shadow analysis, because you mentioned that, right now we don't persist that in the system. It's an interactive tool. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't be able to get anything from the services that we have right now. Do anybody in the back want to add?
So yeah, you're quite right that most of the data that's in the API right now is literally what's coming out of the database. But we've started to do some things like zoning regulations, which are calculated and not persisted per se. We calculate them on the fly. And so we're starting to bring some of those things. We're working on some more of this kind of calculated fields and services that can do analysis. We don't have shadow analysis right now. Yeah, so it's a new place for us to go. As far as data interchange, it's a GraphQL API. So that provides a lot of flexibility, we find, in trying to get data in and out of the system. But yeah, if you're comfortable with JSON documents and whatnot, it's pretty lingua franca.
Thank you so much. Wait, what about flood?
Not yet. So we have a big topic about simulation, analysis and whatnot over the next year, but we don't have anything at the moment for that. But these are big topics that we're looking at, yeah.
Since you brought up the word flood, yeah. So the question was about flood. And for those who don't already know, we actually have a brand new flood simulation tool in ArcGIS Pro. Yeah, so I would encourage you to try that. It actually dynamically flows the water through barriers and everything. So it's 3D, a 3D simulation, so you should try that. Yeah.
It's Pro. It gives you everything.
If you're planning on integrating the road networks, will the parcels then be like context aware? So will they actually know their orientation? So if they're facing the streets or if it's like the backside? Because so far we have like, it was always, we needed to put this in manually. So it kind of make a lot of sense if this was being done automatically.
So the first thing is to get the streets there. And after that, like, I know that edge assignment of the parcel has been something that we've been dealing outside of urban. There we already have that as a ticket in our system that we need to handle the edge parcel a little better. And it might be that we do it in the app and you don't have to do it outside. That's still being determined. We haven't gotten as far as that, but yeah, we know that that's a must.
Okay, perfect.
We already have shadow analysis in urban. Are there plans to integrate other simulations like wind, for example?
That's a really good question. And like you said, the word integrate. So again, we're trying to determine now what we do inside of urban, what we let other systems do, what we bring in. But like you mentioned, wind is one of the analysis that we've heard quite a bit. There are actually some prototypes already in this office. I'm going to go like this about that. And the plan is like at some point get them to urban. But again, it's all in the research mode at this point. So more news to come later on.
I have 3 questions which I'm just interested in, and maybe also other people it might help potentially for context. So you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that certain things are now available, if I understood it correctly, certain things that are available in urban are now available in enterprise. So something that you mentioned is now available on enterprise.
So urban right now, as the underlying platform, it's ArcGIS Online right now. The plan is to move it to our other platform, enterprise. So then there's the option of the user to either deploy on online or deploy on enterprise. And that has to do with being on premises or having private clouds. So it's a little bit more controlled environment for the organizations that are using it.
Yeah, no, then I misunderstood that the difference was basically using ArcGIS Online versus enterprise, which was exactly the distinction, because maybe not everybody is aware, or at least for me, it's not perfectly clear what the distinction is between using the tools in ArcGIS Online and enterprise. And enterprise is much more, if I understood it right, is much more closed, and you can run it, I don't know, on your own servers.
So yeah, there is that, but like it's just a different. It would be the same application on both. Like it's just that it's being deployed in a different platform. And for some users do it for more control over their deployments, or for security reasons. There are countries that have their sovereignty laws that don't allow them to have things in public clouds. So it's just one more flavor of urban to have the users or have available for the users. But it's going to be the same application.
I remember the terminology of the portals, but maybe this is
the excuse me.
ArcGIS
Portal, yes. This would be,
as you said, 1,000 tools, right? All right, but second question, also regarding the streets, could it be that the streets that are, or the improvements on the urban side for the streets, have maybe something to do with the streets in CityEngine?
There is some connection and relationship between these things. So both CityEngine and Urban are working on these topics right now, and we do talk to each other. So
okay, good. Next question. Maybe a naive question, but just also because some people like myself are not too deep into these things. So just a super high-level naive question. What's the main difference in capability and functionality between the 3D JavaScript 3D API and the Urban API?
They're for different things. So Maps SDK for JavaScript, which is the official name of it these days. It used to be the JavaScript API, right? Controls things on many aspects of the platform in ArcGIS, right? Like, in fact, a lot of the things that we need to do in Urban need to be done there first, so we can do them on the scene. Because at the end, Urban is a scene viewer, a specialized scene viewer, right, for the planner. So the API, the Urban API, it's just controlling the schema of Urban and being able to read and write.
So it's building on top of that other API.
We build a lot of, yes, and an answer from the dev team. Yeah, see.
Yeah, so the Urban API, Lisa. Sorry, I'm coming in and making a mess, of course. It's all recorded. Great. Yeah, so that's absolutely right. So the Urban API is built on top of the ArcGIS REST API, and the REST API itself directly gets data from the databases like feature services, and so it's like a layer on top that abstracts the very complex, we're aware of that, schema of our feature services where we store the data. And the Urban API is really just at this point about data and not visualization. And actually the JavaScript API is much more on visualization in 3D and 2D. And so in that sense, they do very, very different things. I hope that helped to clarify.
I can give some practical input on how you would use that, because we're using all these APIs in Urban XR, and that means we're using the Urban API to get information from the Urban model, which then contains references to services, and from there we're using the Maps SDK to get additional data, and we're using the REST API, for instance, for login purposes into ArcGIS Online and all these things. So there's multiple APIs that you will basically use together in the end. Yeah. I don't want to touch it. More questions? You
do. You guys got me thinking. I was curious, for the streets, are they based on regulatory standards, and is that standard an international standard or different municipalities? Because I know the third party on the CityEngine side, the third party complete street script is based on NACDO, for instance. So is there different standards or different criteria that in Urban you could set your streets to?
Well, I don't know if we haven't gone that far, but I know that you mentioned OSM several times today, right?
Yeah.
So we actually were discussing this yesterday of like having OSM as being one of the data sets that you can ingest, but I know that that's not the question that you were asking. Chris, do you want to say anything about this in your investigation? Have you gotten that far?
So the question was about whether it's going to...
Different street standards that
Yeah.
you apply, say for instance, NACTO versus that.
So in the end, we will have our own schema internally, right? And we would try to open it up in terms of data import to, let's say, the ones which make the most sense to import directly. So for example, importing from OSM, or importing from a few other well-known standards. But in the end, we will have our own schema internally. The main reason being that, and that's something which came up many times in our internal discussion, is that the challenge for us is to have a schema which can do two things. To do visualization well, so to have enough data to really represent the streets visually in 3D in a way that it's good enough to do planning and urban planning around the streets, but then also to do accessibility and other kind of analysis, so to be able to route along the network. Because there are different schemas out there which normally try to optimize for one or the other. And we have to do both, or we want to do both. So yeah.
Something like ADA, for instance, like where you would flag the different sections that need to have compliance.
But I mean, that's a good input. We'll definitely take a look at that, right?
Yeah, and maybe I could expand a little bit more. So the standards that you're referring to say how wide a bike lane should be, or how wide a street should be under certain speeds. Mm-hmm. So these are going to be parameters similar to how we deal with space use types on buildings. You can imagine that type of surface space on streets. Exactly. And so being able to save these as street types is something that we're exploring as well. And in that case, maybe we could come up with maybe a default that's highly aligned with NACTO standards. But I think we're also aware of a much larger international audience as well. So we'll probably expect you to build out the standards that make most sense for the locale that the urban model is built for.
No more questions? Thank you.